So here in Oregon, we passed by ballot initiative because the legislature didn't have the courage to do it. I was tempted to name a body part, but what the heck. And in 1997, and then again a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, was when I was doing the morning show here on AM 620 KPOJ in Portland. The conservatives got a ballot petition again to repeal the right of an individual who is dying to have a doctor prescribe to them a lethal cocktail. Basically, it's an overdose of barbiturates. You drink it and fall asleep, and about an hour later, you quietly stop breathing and pass away. But here in Oregon, you have to have two doctors, both of them in agreement with each other, that this person is within 6 months of the end of their life, and that they are of sound mind, that they can rationally make this decision and have done so. If they need psychiatric help, that they've gotten it, or that there has been a psychiatric evaluation, that they're not simply, for example, experiencing depression or something like that would be treatable, and that basically this, and it's their choice. And one of the things we found actually in Oregon when people had this choice was that we found over this, it's been more than a decade now, is that people very often postpone using these things up until the point where they die a natural death. In other words, about half of all the prescriptions, I believe, if my recollection of the statistics is right, never get used. This has been legal in Switzerland since 1941. It's been legal in Belgium since 2002, and it's been legislatively legally available in the Netherlands since 2002, but permitted by the courts since 1984. And now comes John West. JohnWest.net is his website, and he is the author of a new book. It's called The Last Good Nights, Assisting My Parents with Their Suicides. And there was recently an interview on television with John that I watched, and I've read his book, and I find parts of this very troubling. And as an advocate of Oregon's right to die law, or right to death with dignity law is how we refer to it here. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are an attorney. Your father was a psychiatrist. Your mother was a psychologist. In some ways, there are a lot of parallels in our lives. I'm not an attorney, but my at least with how our parents passed away. My father died of cancer. My mother died of Alzheimer's, which is the case with both of your parents. And your father approached you and asked you to help him die, and you did. And he was within 6 months of dying a painful, awful death. In fact, one of his legs had broken just getting into the shower as a result of the cancer having eaten his bones so badly. I can certainly empathize with wanting to say, okay, I'm out of here now. Do I have the story right so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Except he was more like within 6 days or 6 weeks, not 6 months.
Okay, I got it. But then your mother, you sat down with your mother, and you said to her that, and let me set the time frame first of all for our listeners. This was in 1999, was it?
That's correct. Late 98, early 99.
And this was in the midst of Jack Kevorkian, for those people who are old enough to remember, being a three-ring media circus. And part of it was that Kevorkian loved the spotlight. Part of it, I think a much larger part of it, was that the prosecutor in that Detroit suburb, I forget which one it was now, loved the media spotlight. And we were very paying attention to this, in part just because I grew up in Michigan and our oldest child was born in Detroit, where we were familiar with the area. We have actually friends, one of whom, a couple, the wife is an old girlfriend of mine and her husband is a physician, and they're good friends of Louise's and mine. And they know Dr. Kevorkian socially as well as professionally, or had known him for years. And so we were following this. So this was about the time that you were having this conversation with your father. right?
Well, it was sort of at the tail end of Kevorkian's.
This is after he had been arrested.
It was after he'd been arrested. In fact, it was about midway between my father's death and my mother's that he was convicted and sent to prison.
Okay, so you were. A, this was an environment where assisting people in suicide was in the air, and B, if you do it, you will go to jail was in the air.
Right. It's very important to keep in mind this all happened in California, where even physician-assisted death with dignity was not legal and still is not.
Okay. Here's the part that troubles me, John. We're talking with John West. His new book is The Last Good Nights, Assisting My Parents with Their Suicides. As I told you, my mother died of Alzheimer's, and my brother cared for her for the last couple of years of her life. And she pretty much lost contact with everybody. She and ultimately died of the disease itself. But you went to your mother when she still recognized you. She knew who you were, and you told her what you had done in helping your father die. And then, quoting you, you said, "And I want you to know that I'm willing to assist you too if you want me to." And she said, "Okay." I have a real problem with somebody approaching somebody with dementia and saying, "Would you like me to help you kill yourself?"
Well, and I think you should. And if it were that simple, I would be opposed to it too. But it's also important to remember the context. First of all, this was something that she had not only announced publicly to the family that she wanted to do prior to this, prior to my going to her and telling her what I had done with my father, but this was something that both of them had very openly and publicly stated was their wish, not to live in pain and agony and debility and all of those sorts of things, as a lot of medical people do. They know which side of the white coat they want to stay on, and
Right.
They don't relish the idea of being patients themselves, especially in pain or debility.
But in the last days of my mother's life, we had conversations with my brother Stan, who was caring for her. The hospice people, in fact, the 2 days before she died, Stan called me up, and he called my other two brothers, and he said the hospice people are recommending that we increase Mom's morphine dose. It will probably shorten her life. We all understood what that was a euphemism for. But she was at that point in pain. And we all said, do whatever the hospice people want you to do. And off she went. That's quite a different thing. I mean, you didn't discuss this with your sisters.
No, my sisters were not part of this equation.
We have a minute left, John West. Why not? And why? I'm still very troubled by this.
Well, my mother made her decision when she was very, very competent. If she had not been, I would not have been able to. And this is part of the reason why this has to be legalized and regulated. You shouldn't put family or friends or people who aren't sure of certain things in this position. I was sure, absolutely 100%, no question about it. She was a psychologist. She was losing her mind. She didn't want to turn into a vegetable, and this was a well-known fact. The timing of when we talked about it was secondary to the matter.
But couldn't she have said, I'm losing my mind when I've lost it, put me out of my misery?
If she had said that, it would have been very different. I would have said, I don't know that that's possible because, I can't shoot you. You have to do it yourself. It has to look like
Right.
An assisted situation.
That's a tough one. When does assisted suicide become murder? This is a very, very fine line, and people can make up their own minds. John West is the author. The book is The Last Good Nights, Assisting My Parents with Their Suicides. John, thanks for dropping by today.
Thank you.
Good talking.